Hello my friends and welcome to another video. As you are all aware, I am in the thick of prepping for my upcoming market. My last few videos have been about different things in prepping for my market. My upcoming videos will be as well up until that point. And I guess if you're new here, you wouldn't know that. So hi, my name is Chris and I'm in the thick of market prep. I have been doing different things to try to improve on my market setup every single time I've gone to market. I've only done a handful of markets, but I'm one of those people who likes that 1% better kind of thought process. So I always try to improve on the experience of my layout, as well as just how my process works for things like tagging and all that good stuff. So the next few videos will be all about that, including a video where I am going to be going over kind of my thoughts on the differences in my upcoming setup. But one of the things that I wanted to work on and have been for the last few weeks is my Ami stands. So I can't remember if it was my first market or my second market where I did this, but I struggled with trying to figure out how I would display plushies that just don't stand well on their own. I don't have a lot of areas where I could lean them up against things, and I was just kind of frustrated with it. So Mr. Skein helped me out, and we ended up creating some Ami stands. And these are the original stands that we created. So this is just a plastic material that he had left over. It's used for cabinetry, like in the outdoors and on boats and things like that. And he used some of his machinery to cut it into this shape for me. And then we drilled a hole and inserted a little brass rod that we had on hand. Now, I brought these to the market and they worked great for displaying plushies like this guy who can't stand on his own. You just, insert it into a stitch and he's nice and displayed. At that market and my last few markets, I didn't charge anything for these. If a customer wanted to purchase a plushie and it had a stand on it, I would say, would you like the stand? Some would say no, assuming maybe that I was charging for it. I don't know. I'd take the stand out, put the plushie in the bag and on their way. Others that said yeah or how much, I would say no worries, it's included in the price, and I would just give it to them. And I was pretty happy with these because they kind of blend into the background. I used black tablecloths, so the plushie still stood out, but it was on a nice display stand. But I wanted to figure out what I was going to do going forward. And I have been dabbling in the world of 3D modeling as a hobby over the last few months. So I decided to see if I could come up with some ideas around some Ami stands that I could possibly 3D print. Now, one of the struggles with a 3D printed stand is the piece that the plushie actually rests on. Because as you're 3D printing, this can become somewhat unstable. So a lot of times they're wider at the bottom than at the top. So I was working on a way to figure out how to incorporate an Ami stick in the stand so that this way I could 3D print the base, but not have something that could possibly break off in the plushie. And again, I'm really pretty new to this whole 3D printing thing, so I wasn't 100% sure of the stability. I tried a lot of pre-made models out there and they worked out pretty great. If the plushie is the right size and it fits on there okay, they're actually pretty sturdy, but I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I drew up in Procreate, and I'll pop it up here, kind of my original design, where I wanted to kind of have different types of stands, so themed to maybe the plushie that was going to be on the stand. And I want to show you the different ones that I came up with. So I did go through a bunch of different prototypes. My Skeiniac member level, thank you guys, have been helping me with coming up with ideas, and I still do have more that I have not yet made. But the first one that I was working on is that one that I drew up, which was a mushroom, and here is where we ended up. And basically what this consists of is two separate 3D prints, one of the white parts, one of the red parts. I glue them all together, and then this is actually a knitting needle that's double-ended that has been cut in half. And what I did here is I glued it in, but I think what I'm going to be doing going forward is just I've made the hole so that it's pretty well friction fit. It can be glued in if need be, but otherwise it kind of stays in pretty well on its own. But let me show you some of the other designs. So without the Ami stick, just to kind of make it easier to see, obviously we have the mushroom here. Then I have this leaf. And all of these designs were done by me in the 3D modeling software. So these aren't anything that are licensed by anybody or anything like that. I have a flower with a yellow center And I have this in multiple colors. So I have the lavender, I have a white one, and then I have this pink one. I've got this kind of fluffy 3D cloud, and then this rocky scape. And like I said, my members have been coming up with really cool ideas. One was like a seashell, which I think would be really cool for like mermaid plushies and things. But I tried to focus on designs that I could use at least at this upcoming market for the particular plushies that I have. So let me show you kind of what, for example, this flower would look like on the plushie that I designed it for. I have a couple of these little dolls, and as you can see, it holds really well. Especially if it's just on a table. But this is one of those ones that I mentioned is just friction fit. So it's nice and tight in here and it just stays. I mean, you could glue it if you were unsure or if it started to kind of come out more easily. The other thing I wanted to show is that these Ami sticks, when you cut them in half, they're actually hollow inside. So Mr. Skein gave me some assistance here. I don't know if the camera is going to pick that up, but as you can see, it looks pretty solid. What he did is mixed a 2-part epoxy and just kind of filled the end and rounded it over so that it's not sharp or anything like that, which I think is really cool. And just to give you an idea of what some of these would look like, so that's kind of the cloud one with the Ami stick in it. You get the idea. But basically these could be used for any style plushie that doesn't stand on its own. And I tried a few of the larger plushies and they actually stand okay too. My thought is that if someone wanted to have, you know, a stand for something that was a little taller and maybe this particular distance is a little short for the plushie in mind, then this could just be swapped out with a full Ami stick, for example. It actually still does hold pretty well. Obviously you'll get to a certain size where this may not be as stable as it needs to be for something really, really large. But like 100% of the plushies that I needed something to help them stand, this worked out for. So I'm really, really excited to use these at the market. I'm still trying to figure out pricing. There are 3D print calculators where you put in kind of how much filament was used, and it will tell you based on wear and tear and electricity and all that stuff, like this is your material cost. So I'm working on calculating that out, but I haven't finished calculating all of them. So I'm going to continue working on that, and I'm trying to figure out what I would charge a customer at a market for it. So still playing with that. If you have suggestions, please leave them in the comments down below. I love you guys' feedback on that kind of stuff because I feel like I am more on the side of undercharging and I should be raising prices on a lot more things. At least that's the feedback that you guys have given me, which I really appreciate. And I am doing. My plushie prices are going up, so I am working through that. But yeah, let me know what you think on pricing for these. And then, you know, I got into the bug of this whole 3D printing and modeling and stuff like that and started to work on some more stuff. The next thing I did is I found a pre-made model. I did not design this one for a finger. So let me show you my 3D printed finger. And you may be wondering to yourself, what? Why? And the reason is I was looking for a way to display my Swoop the Bats by Crochet Carpenter. I love this pattern so much. You guys know that if you watched my video where I made it and can't stop playing with it. But I wanted a way to display that this is a finger puppet. It's the only one that I have. I haven't made any of the other Stitchkins. This animal is the one that I chose. My original thought was that I would get this to work somehow in my grid panel so that it was standing out and I could have Swoop on here. But when I did that, he's facing the wrong direction, no matter which way I position this thing. However, sitting on the table, he looks great. So I printed out 3 of these so that I could bring them to my market and display my Swoop the Bats, which I thought was really, really cool. I don't imagine anybody wanting to buy these. It's really just for display purposes. I need to take a look at the licensing of the model that I downloaded. It was a free model, just to make sure that it's okay if I do sell it, if someone does want to buy it. I can't imagine anyone would. Again, it's just to show that it's this versus if you bought one of the plushies, maybe you do want to display display it, but I don't know, you never know. So if they do, I don't imagine I'm gonna have a hefty cost on this one, but it, you know, because there's no assembly and all that kind of good stuff. But yeah, I thought that was really cool to be able to display these guys on the table at the market. And then last but not least, I started to mess around a little bit with some more things for display on my table. Now, I made a video a couple months ago, I would say, I think it was before, yeah, it was before my spring market, where I was trying to enhance the experience of my table yet again, and I wanted to make a cover for this shelving unit that I use. This thing has 2 layers and it has metal legs that stick down. You can do it where the second shelf goes this direction or goes that direction, but I use it to display a lot of my dragons and things like that. And in that video, I used styrofoam and carved it to try to make it look almost like a mountainscape. And this was the end result of that. So it came out pretty good. I was happy with it. And when I used it on display, I liked how it looked. But the thing about this is it is extremely fragile. So I could not pack this away with everything because even just, you can see right here where that white mark is, any little nick to it just breaks the styrofoam off, obviously. And I had to kind of put it in a different place so that I could keep it intact. So it's definitely not something that's going to last long term. So I wanted to see if there was something I could do with 3D printing to replace this. And what I ended up coming up with is this little cover. So this is half of it because it is too large to 3D print into one piece. And what I've done here is embedded magnets so that basically these 2 pieces go on top of the shelf and come together. And this is what that whole mountainscape will now look like. I'm gonna put it over the shelf and hold it up so you can see. So now it looks like this. Now I do have some knobs that will be under here that hold the shelf to the legs. So this will raise up a little bit, but it should be deep enough that you're not gonna see any of that. And what I think I'm gonna do is just go through with some paint and do some dry brushing to kind of accentuate a lot of these, you know, rocky terrain type of deals. But now that I'm looking at it on camera, I don't even know if I need to do that. And we're only going to do that if we have time. So chances are I may not get to it. But I do think it is a cool addition to the table. I do still have to print the other one. It's a very long print. I think I want to say it was like 11 and change hours for this thing to print. In case you're wondering, and I probably should have mentioned it, but again, I'm still so new to this 3D printing thing. The stands themselves, I can print, you know, 3 or 5, and that'll take like maybe 2 hours, 2 and change, 3 hours to print those, depending on the complexity of the stand. And then it's just a matter of assembly and stuff like that. So I've really been enjoying learning the 3D modeling software. It can be frustrating at times, like with anything new that you're learning, I guess. But I'm really excited for how this is going to enhance some of the things at my market and on the table. So I will let you guys know if I come up with anything else. I do know I want to work on a few more signs. I did a sign in my last video and I have a few more in mind, but we'll see how far we get before the market. And now it is time to get into this week's makes. This week was a bit of a disaster. I've been doing pretty good on this schedule, but this week was rough. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's remind ourselves of what the makes were for this week. So I was looking to make 2 of the Shadow Man pattern and 2 of Cookie the Cat. The Shadow Man pattern is by Hanagurumi. I made 2 of these at one of my last markets and people loved them, and I wanted to make 2 more this time around. I lost yarn chicken in the worst way, you guys. Let me show you. Oh, man, I am so bummed. So let me explain how I ended up here. I checked my little cubby with all of my brown shades, and I had a full skein, a most of a second skein, and I peeked behind where I keep extras and saw a third skein, or so I thought. This is the color Sand in Premier Basics Chenille, And that's what I wanted to use because I feel like it looks like that whole burlap, you know, that he's supposed to look like. But I didn't have any safety eyes painted yet. So I made the arms, I made the feet. You sew both of those on in this pattern. There's a lot of sewing because there's embroidery detail. There's a felt mouth, which I already had cut out. So I was ready to go. Started working on these. Got to the point of where it was time to put in eyes for this guy, and I was like, shoot, I don't have any safety eyes painted yet. So I just cut off and started on the next head. And I was like, on my next lunch break, I will paint the safety eyes for both of these, put them in, and, you know, Bob's your uncle. And I did paint the safety eyes, which I'll show you really quickly. I put a little bit of a mirrored sparkle glitter in as a base, and then I just used black glitter because I want them to be, for the most part, just dark and black, but I do want them to have a little shine and sparkle. So that's what I end up doing. But I got the eyes painted, put them in. I was working on this guy, and then I got to here and I was like, oh, let me go grab that other skein. That other skein with steel cut oats. So here we are. I ended up putting an order in right away, and that should be coming hopefully today, tomorrow. So I'll show you the finished version of these guys in next week's video. I was really bummed because I was feeling like I was pretty on track, but yeah. So Shadow Man is on hold for the time being. I have everything other than their bodies done, and I'll go through the details with you on that make in next week's video because that's when I'll be able to show you the final version. As mentioned, Cookie the Cat by Snugglebeans Crochet was the other one that I wanted to have two of, and I did get these two done. So I've got two. They are identical. I will probably only put one out at a time. This I've also made before. I don't recall if I did these little feet thingies in the last one. And I feel like maybe I didn't. I don't know. I don't love them. I don't know if it's because I used the pink nose on the cat and I don't like that. I like a black nose on the cat, but it just was getting so lost. I decided to do the pink nose, and I did the little pink toe beans. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is about it. I don't love them, but it's fine. I mean, he'll sell, someone will love him or them. They both have 35mm hand-painted eyes that I did. And yeah, I don't do poly pellets in these guys. I know some people do in the splooters, and I have done it before, but I didn't feel like it was necessary in these guys. This is Premier Basics Chenille again. I did and have been doing everything in yarn over because I feel like it's just coming out more as the pattern's intended. So unless a pattern says they did yarn under, I'm trying to be cognizant and do yarn over. 6.5mm hook on these guys. The only thing that you're sewing on is the ears and the head to the body. I think a lot of people are familiar with this, but most everything else, the tail, the legs, are all crocheted in. So yeah, another two guys for this week's makes. So that was a success, but Shadow Man was not. I did end up finishing these guys with time because it's time I would have used up for Shadow Man. So I did get started on this coming week's makes, which is more of like the cryptid week. All of these patterns are patterns I've never done before, so I knew they were going to take me a little longer anyway, and I'm going to have to dedicate some time back to finishing up Shadow Man this week, so I kind of just offset it that way. So I started making the Nessie pattern. I've got to paint a bunch of eyes for whatever I'm making this coming week. So partial success, and we're bleeding into next week, but we'll hopefully wrap those cryptids as well as these Shadow Man plushies next week so I can show you all of them in their completion. That is all I have for you today. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed, please consider doing so. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.